Good afternoon, welcome everyone to our Introducing Dapian webinar, the project originally known as the Digital DPIA. My name is Leanne Hawkins, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Coalescent Limited, and my experience is in taking complex public sector challenges and simplifying them through the introduction of digital product. So just what you're going to learn in the next sort of 30-40 minutes then. Format of this webinar is, what on earth is the Dapian product and where does it come from? What are the benefits of my organisation using it? What are the costs and the business case for implementing it? What's the implementation process and what does that look like? And how can you share this with your wider organisation after this webinar as well? So the Digital DPI project was born out of a collaboration that's brought together by Co-Fund Collaborate to innovate CC2I, and it involved Greater Manchester Combined Authority, GMCA, University of Nottingham, Leeds City Council, the Information and Records Management Society, IRMS, ACNOW Training Provider, Cheshire Merseyside Health and Care Partnership, Norfolk County Council, the Information Sharing Gateway, the ISG, NHSX, the London Office for Technology and Innovation, and indeed the ICO also attending our kick-off workshop and involved in the project. So we kicked off our discovery phase back in March 2020, where we all met around a virtual roundtable. We did this remotely because lockdown had just about kicked in, and we explored what the current kind of what I call analogue processes looked like. And essentially they were complex or more complex than they needed to be, and that there was a general lack of awareness around the organisation as to when the right time to do a DPIA was, and indeed if they needed to do one at all and what type. So we looked at how complex the process was, and we found that there was a general fear around conducting DPIAs, that there were people within the organisation that were fearful of identifying risks. Quite rightly, they sort of saw that as possibly being a barrier to their project progressing. We also looked at what their current caseloads and volumes were, and generally around the table we found that what their caseloads were now and what they should be are probably two very different things. You'll probably agree that you probably should be doing more DPIAs than you're currently doing. There's a general lack of consistency across the organisations involved, and indeed some internally as well, using kind of different forms, different structures, and a very varying in terms of the quality of the DPIA that was being produced. So we needed to address that. And then there's the review process. And the DPIA should be reviewed regularly, which is quite a vague term. So we put some real thought into how we put a lot more structure around that as a review sort of tool. And then finally, most of the organisations around the table failing to kind of meet their obligations to publish their DPIAs. So I'm going to launch in a minute into a demo of the product. So this project ran for 6 months and actually finished just last week. So that project has now come to a close. The organisations are using the Dapian product in their sort of business as usual activities now. But I thought it was worth me just talking through very quickly about the different permission sets that we have in the product. We have staff, so that's the general staff members, and they can complete the screening questions, complete any of the DPIA forms, and assign them around the organisation and indeed to people outside their organisation, known as third parties, to help them and support them in that process. We have third parties. They're people that are outside your organisation, typically your suppliers and your partners, and they can only access specific elements that they're given access to, so you can tightly control what third parties can get hold of and input to. We then have our signatories, and they're essentially the IG team, information asset owners, and they're providing their expertise in support to the process, and they're also taking responsibility for sign-off. We then have our advisory role, and that's to cover your DPOs and your Caldecott Guardians, and essentially they're there to make recommendations. So I'll jump straight into a demo then. So what I have here are these 3 tabs at the top of my screen. They're the product, and they represent the different roles in the process. I'm going to start off being a staff member, move across to being kind of some IG expertise supporting in the process, and then I'm going to be kind of a DPO type role, making recommendations. So this is our homepage of the product. It's where your staff members are turning up. It tells them about what to expect from the product and how it will behave, and they can log in. So it's a starting as a general staff member, starting the process of completing my DPIA. So I'm going to start a DPIA, but probably before I do that, I'm probably going to run an internal search just to check that there are no duplicates of my DPA that already exists. Someone else hasn't already started it, that sort of thing. I also might go and hunt in our external search feature, and that external search contains DPIAs from all of the organisations that are using this product. Any DPIA that another organisation has said, yes, this can be made publicly available, is in our external search, and that's in the kind of spirit of the product. We like you to share your DPIAs as long as it's appropriate to do so, acknowledging that it's not always appropriate to do so. So in that external search, they'll find possibly one that's quite similar to the one that they're going to conduct, and they could look at that DPIA as an example and take a steer from it to help them complete it, just to see how another organisation has taken on that challenge. If anyone wants to see more on that feature, let me know, and we'll arrange a one-to-one demo of that particular feature. But for now, we're going to start our DPIA process. These are my details. I'm then going to enter information on my product or service that I'm running. So this happens to be in adult social care, and my DPIA is going to be on the use of Microsoft Teams in adult social care, and that's using Teams to conduct care and support assessments. Project sponsor is going to be Omar, and the product owner is myself, and my IG lead, if I know it, happens to be Michelle. I don't have, that's not a non-required field at this point though. If I don't know who my IG lead is, that's fine. I then have my Dpi screening questions, and these are questions that we've worked really closely with the ICO and the other project members on to ensure that they're really clear and they're easy for people to answer. Throughout the form, you'll see that we've used these green text boxes. You'll see these multiple times throughout the demo that I'm going to run, and they're essentially guiding text boxes that take the question and provide advice in plain English on how to answer them properly. It's essentially putting an expert on the shoulders of non-experts. So I'm going to go through the process of completing these screening questions. Like so, and it's telling me that I need to complete a full DPIA, a CCTV DPA, and I need to complete international transfers DPIA as well. If it decided that I didn't need to complete a DPIA based on the questions and how I'd answered the questions, it would suggest that I referred to my IG team, and you can then engage with your IG team through this product and decide if you do actually need one. So that's great. It tells me what I have to do, setting my expectations as to around what happens next. And now what I've done is I've started the process of completing a DPA. Here are the screening questions. I can go and review them if I want to see what I put in my screening questions. I can take a download of them if I want to save them elsewhere, but here they are, they're saved here. So I'm going to go and start my DPIA form that it told me to do, the DPIA full, and I'm going to assign that to myself in this case. I could have assigned it to another colleague, but I'm going to do this work myself. It's currently in progress, telling me what's going to happen next. And then I'm going to submit that. So now I get my little pop-up notifications. You'll see them happening regularly, notifications about changes that are happening in the system. I now have two things in my case. I have my original screening questions that we completed earlier, and I now have this new thing, my DPIA form. So let's go and start filling that in. just to speed up this demo, I'm going to pop in some nonsense answers just to get through this. I think it's important that you see the experience of this form. We've set them out with plenty of green guidance text boxes. We've also kept the form as short as possible, only kind of expanding. So if I say yes to this, we expand and make the form bigger. So the form stays as short as possible until there's a need, for it to expand. Now, I'm going to intentionally leave this question blank. It's a required field, and the reason I'm doing that is I want to show you what happens when the form fails its field validation. So we're nearly there. Now, even down to the order in which we place some of these answers, you'll probably see on most forms websites that one of these ones is kind of at the top of the list, but actually we know that the most relevant one is probably public task or any of these other two, so that's why we've put real thought into the order in which we place some of these answers. Now, as a staff member, I'm going to say that I've kind of reached the level of my expertise and I need some help from someone else. So I'm now going to go and ask for some help from someone else. I'm going to come out of that, save my changes, and I'm going to reassign this to another role, and I'm going to ask for some help from someone that is in my IG team, essentially. This person here I know can help me, the information asset owner. So I'm going to go next step and ask them to help me. And submit that. So you can now see, sorry. Right, so you can now see that that has changed the assignee to information asset owner. That information asset owner will have received an email notification into their normal work email box. I happen to have that here. So in their normal work email box, they're going to receive an email notification. They can open that and see, oh, Leanne's asking me to help me with this bit, and I can click on this link here and it'll take me directly to the point at which she's asking for help. But I will log in to the platform and do that. There's the information asset owner role. So as well as the email, I also have this your notifications section, and this is where those notifications are coming in. So I can see here Leanne's asking for some help, so I'm going to go in and do that. I'm reviewing the form, can see she's doing a great job of completing this, and that she's going to want some help with some stuff. So let's go through and finish completing the rest of this form. Nearly at the bottom. Now we have identifying risks. In our next release of this product, we're releasing automated risk generation. So that it would take the responses that the user's given in the form above and will proactively suggest risks that make sense based on those answers. So we're helping non-IG experts to start producing their risks. For the meantime, we'll just enter them manually, so we have some guidance on what to do there, and we enter the likelihood of those risks before we're mitigating them, and then we're going to mitigate them, and then we enter the likelihood of them after we've mitigated them. So those, the combination of those, of that being unlikely and minor, automatically generates the overall risk of being low. We can continue to add as many additional risks and mitigations as the project service needs. So we'll come out of that and save my changes, and what I would likely do next is just reassign it back to the person who assigned it to me, and they may well go off and ask other people to help them in supporting it. Maybe they're going to go and ask a third party to supply some credentials or input to the form. So let's say they want to upload their credentials. Here I'm going to select a nice picture of a scone. Here's my scone, and we're going to submit that. So the files then will be attached to this case, and you can see those coming in here. So here's my SCON, and that's my screenshot of my SCON attached there, say coming in, say from a third-party supplier, if that's relevant. But what we generally found is that once the staff member has got all the input from everyone else and they're kind of happy with it and it needs to be kind of progressed for sign-off, they would then probably assign it to the information asset owner, who's then going to look through the form, jumping through it and seeing that, you know, the risks are too significant, so they're not willing to sort of sign this off. Maybe they want to get some advice from the DPO. So I'm going to go and find someone who can help me, someone with the role of DPO or Caldecott Guardian. There's my data protection officer. That will do. Next step. Are you happy? Off, or whatever you might want to say to your DPO. So now that's assigned it to the data protection officer. Again, that data protection officer receives their email notification and they can go and see what's been said and jump straight to that task to do something with it. But we will sign in as that data protection officer. It's in my notifications. There it is. Are you happy to sign this off? Are you happy to sign this off? So I would be looking at the case, seeing they've done their screening questions, looking at the details in their full DPIA, and say, okay, I can see here that they actually, this is fine. It doesn't need anything from me. It can be signed off. So what I would do is add a new task. I could either say that the DPO recommends changes, or I could do DPO recommends that it goes to the ICO. Essentially, is that that's what that's saying? Or the DPO recommends sign off. So I will go for DPO recommends sign off and assign that to the DPO to complete. So we now have our DPO recommends sign off form. And if I open that form, can the risk be mitigated? Yes. And then whatever advice I want to give to the user in this case, and submit that. So now when I look into my case, I have my 3 things and I'm essentially ready for this to go back to the information asset owner for them to sign this off. So I'm going to change the entire status of this case to approved, which is advisory recommend sign off. They're not signing it off. DPOs don't have the authority to sign them off. They are just making recommendations. They make their recommendations, and then that gets changed to a status of approved. So when the information asset owner, they would have got an email, by the way, because they're on this watchers list. These are people that have been involved in the process so far. They automatically get added to the watchers list. You can add new members. Anyone that you think is interested in the progress of this DPIA gets added to the watchers list, and they will be receiving updates as the status of the task and case changes. But I'll do that as is. So if I look at my dashboard as an information asset owner, and I have a look for all DPIAs that essentially I now need to sign off because they have been approved by the DPO, I open it up and I can see that they're recommending sign off. I can see that the data protection officer is all fine. So I'm going to do a few things. First of all, in the spirit of the product, there's nothing sensitive in this DPIA. So I'm going to make it publicly visible outside of my organisation. What that means is it's popped it in this external search for other people now to go and view it as maybe an example to take a steer from in the future. I'm also going to set a review. Now, if I don't set a review, it'll automatically set it for a year's time. But I'm going to set the review as today because I want to show you how we do our review process. You can see it set as review, and it's quite rightly saying that it is due for review. The other feature here is that we have history version control. So I'll open the history. I can see every single user, what changes they made, and what time and date that was done on. So I have a full audit history of what's happened to my case. But otherwise, everything's ready for sign off. So I'm changing the status to signed off and whatever comment I might want to make about that. It's now telling me that the DPIA will be locked. So then it records how this looks at this moment in time, which of course is what you want a record of. So now let's go and jump to review processes. So if we go back to our dashboard, the review processes, anyone that's interested in this DPIA, so probably the person that created it, the information asset owner that signed it off, they'll be getting notifications as and when this DPIA comes up for renew. So their email, they will receive email notifications saying you need to look at this, it's coming up for review. But it also falls into my needs review section on my dashboard. So I've got my DPIA. I don't want to change it because it represents what the DPIA looked like at that moment in time. So instead, what we would do is take a clone of it, select the forms that we want to clone. We could select all of them, or we could just select one. So I want to take this full DPIA form, and then I make a clone of that, and that then links those two together. So you can see that they live side by side. But it puts it back into an editable state, so you can make changes and go through the same processes that we've just been through together in terms of getting it signed off. So that's how we're kind of thinking about the review processes. So I think that's largely the length and breadth of the product. I'd be very happy to kind of show anyone that wants more of a one-to-one demo and do a much deeper dive into all of the features. Just let me know if that's the case, either in the chat box or drop me an email afterwards. For now, we'll jump back to our slides and we'll talk about costs and business case and things. So just to recap on the features then, we've got automated risk generation coming in the next release to help those non-IG experts in generating risks. We have our standardized screening tool that we developed alongside with the ICO, and indeed standardized assessments that cover full DPIA, CCTV DPIA, and then international transfers as well. We did have a DPIA light form towards the start of the project, but actually once we'd tested the full form and users had seen how easy that was to complete, we actually ended up removing it because it didn't generate any time savings. The forms were just easy enough to complete that it just wasn't necessary. So we got rid of that, which I think is a really good thing. We then are looking at things like the summary record and how we can publicly publish those and help people to meet those obligations. And then all of the guidance in the form has been written by the IG experts around the table involved in this collaboration. The review processes we thought about really carefully. All the assessments are collaborative, so you can ask for help from other people inside and outside your organisation. It's a proper case management tool with full audit and history. It's mobile and tablet optimised. It's entirely secure with two-factor authentication. And it's cloud-based, which of course is helping with any of your remote working practices that you have at the moment. We've removed all the jargon from the product and introduced as much advice and guidance as possible to put experts on the shoulders of non-experts in this process. And generally, we're looking to empower the wider organisation to take responsibility for their own DPIAs. We're providing a library of DPIAs for people to be able to take a steer from, to help them complete their own, and all of those features then facilitate us to produce real quality DPIAs in this process and introduce efficiencies. We'll talk a little bit more about the efficiencies in a minute. We've inbuilt the review processes and we're publicly publishing our DPIAs as well. So the business case then, we looked at both the analog process and then in the introduction of the product Dapian and what that introduced in terms of process. So we have the number of hours that the collaborating organisations said on average they spent conducting DPIAs was around 72 hours per DPIA, and that would span, say, anything from like a day, 3 days, up to kind of 8 weeks, but around about 72 hours on average. Using Dapian, it was reduced to 26 hours, and then that gives you a total saving of 46 hours. So if we look closer at the analog DPIA process, and if we look at grade 5, kind of an average of £45,000 per annum, and if we take into account the number of working hours they have in their year after holiday, it's around about 1,680. So that means the maximum number of DPIAs that a person can do in a year is around 23 1/3, and the cost of those DPIAs are just shy of £2,000. If we then look at using Dapians, taking exactly the same parameters, £45,000 a year, 1,680 hours in that year, that means they're able to do around about 64.5 DPIAs in a year, and that cost has been massively reduced to around £700 per DPIA. That gives you a saving of just shy of 64%, and per DPIA £1,200, give or take. So the pricing then, we're being very transparent about our pricing. It's not pricing that Coalescent determined. It was determined by the collaborating organisations. We asked them, how much would you be willing to pay for a product like this? And their response was somewhere between £30,000 and £40,000. And we didn't want to be anywhere near that ballpark. So we didn't want price to be a barrier here at all. So what we have here is a private sector price of 15k. We have a public sector voluntary and education price with a discount of 5k. And then we have our introduction offer, which is for the first two organisations to sign up outside of this collaboration. We're making that offer at 6k. So anyone that's interested in taking up that offer, please do get in touch and we'll get that arranged for you. See, the implementation process then, this is software as a service. We have slots available for implementation in the 3rd week of October. It takes us around 3 days to put that together for you. It covers your subscription to this product, covers a limited number of users, a limited number of DPIAs. There's a full service level agreement. It includes hosting and training as well. So there's literally no other costs kind of involved in this whatsoever. So questions and answers. As I'm actually talking, I'm about 30 seconds behind you. As I'm talking, you're hearing this 30 seconds later. So Q&A doesn't quite work in the same way in live events, but feel free to post any questions you have and I will pick them up afterwards and I will respond to you. Alternatively, you can jump over to our website at dapian.uk. We have a web chat feature there. Please feel free to use that web chat and we'll be monitoring that and we can respond to you there. Or my email address is leanne.hawkins@coalescent.uk. I will be following up with you all individually to provide you with a copy of these slides. So you'll have my contact details there. Anyone that's interested in a follow-up demo with their wider organisation, we're really happy to do that. So just let us know and we can get that arranged for you. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for joining today and I look forward to speaking to you soon.